Three, two, one.
Here we go!
Welcome to Inside the Hive with Kyle and Brandon. Join us as we explore business, real estate, current events, and personal growth. We dive into the latest trends, offer valuable insight, and share stories. Thanks for tuning in. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. All right, welcome back to another episode of Inside the Hive. It has been a minute. Took a little vacation there for the holidays, but it's early January and we're back at it. And something I noticed over the holidays, I went to a lot of holiday parties, a lot of things for New Year's Eve, a lot of things for Christmas, and talked to a lot of real estate developers, real estate investors, people that own real estate and very successful, big portfolios, tons of rental properties, tons of Airbnbs. They're owning shopping centers and boutique hotels and office space and so forth. And there was something that kept coming up. It was almost a joke. It was almost a joke about, man, if you're doing a renovation or you're going to buy something and fix it up, the general contractor and the change orders and the delays and all these things. And I kept asking, what construction management teams and project management teams are being utilized during this process. And I got these looks on my face like, what are you talking about? We manage it ourselves, or our property manager manages a GC. And it just opened my eyes. And it must be because before I got into real estate investing and development, I was in construction management with my partner for 14 years. We started back in 2011, 2012, small home remodels. We moved into light commercial, then larger and larger projects, and then eventually we're getting contracts with SpaceX to do their construction management consulting for all their dining facilities, and we're building out restaurants nationwide and doing 300 Chase banks. And we started growing, and we brought on a lot of professionals that their entire careers were construction management and project management, program management. I'll get into that later. And there's a method to managing these projects where you don't have these change orders, you don't have delays, you don't have all these different things. So it was really interesting for me to hear a lot of people that I admire very much, peers in the industry, and seeing that there was just something that they overlooked. And I thought, if you're going to put anything out there, if you're going to do any sort of podcast or content or put anything out there, it should provide some value to people. I mean, time's valuable. If they're going to take time to listen to you, provide some value. And this is something I know quite a bit about. And I've had some success with this, and I used to be hired to do this. I don't do this anymore, so I'm not trying to sell anything. If anybody called the office, I have about 4 or 5 recommendations, at least Southern California and Arizona area, some in Texas as well, that I would recommend to give them a call to manage some of their projects. But we don't do it anymore, not selling anything, but it's just something that I think people should, if you're going to jump into a space like buying a house and turning it into an Airbnb, or you're going to do a boutique hotel, take something, you do a major renovation of $1, $2, $3 million. If you're going to buy office space, industrial, self-storage, whatever your asset class is, project management and construction management is huge. If those cost overruns go to where you're not expecting, I mean, your investment could be ruined. You could lose everything. It could not pencil anymore halfway through and you're screwed. And it is completely controllable. And that risk, to do investments, to go out to do investments with having that risk out there, I mean, that to me, that's just nuts. And that's a big part of why I think my company, West Hive Capital, has been successful with the developments, the few developments that it's done, and we've had such great success and investors that want to keep coming back for more, is because we manage the projects so closely. I mean, we have GMAX contracts. That's a guaranteed maximum amount of contracts, so they can't change order us in certain areas. We carry certain contingencies. We do all these different things that allow us to perform at a level where we're not worried that we're going to get slapped with some change order or a month-long delay. Like we mitigate that early on. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. And I put some notes down here, and I wanted to explain what project management and construction management, even program management is. And then I wanted to talk about when you don't need it and when you do need it. So I like to use an analogy, and I use it around my office and for clients or old clients. Whoa, that tea was hot. Okay, so but the first analogy that I like to use, my main analogy that I like to use, is a wedding planner. Okay, and the reason that this is because a lot of people have at least been to a wedding or been married, and if you're putting a wedding together, it could be a pain in the ass. So what I like to do is like, when do you need it? When do you not need it? If you are having a friends and family wedding in your backyard or something very small, you don't need a wedding planner. You really don't. I mean, get yourself a cake and a band and do that type of thing. If you're having, a medium-sized wedding and there's a lot of moving parts, you still got to maybe coordinate dinner and the church and this or that, something along those lines. That's where it's a judgment call. Maybe you're a hands-on person and you just want to do everything yourself. Maybe you're like, listen, I don't want to touch it at all. I'm going to hire someone to do it. But right in that middle ground, you're going to get probably a similar result whether you do it yourself or you hire a professional to do it. Then you get to the point where you're going to throw a wedding and it's 250 guests and it's the full band, the full this, the venues and the full dinner. I mean, you're doing one of those like extravagant ones. If the bride or try to do that themselves, they just be stressed out the entire time. Things are going to go wrong. It's just not going to be executed, and it's not going to be what they want. And you're gonna you're gonna want a professional in that situation. They can plan everything. There's a million things that go into it, from photographers to food to the guest list to this to that, invitation. There's a million things, and that's when a planner comes into it. So what I like to do is if you have say a small project, and when I say small project, I'm saying anything less than $200,000 is small enough to where you kind of have to manage it yourself, and a construction manager or hiring a professional company to come in and manage that is just not cost effective. It just isn't. I'd like it to be. I'd like to say just call someone, and if you have just tons of money and you have then go do it. But it's one of those where you kind of want to educate yourself on what is like the best practices and manage it yourself. It's just how it is. It's too small of a project to hire a group to come in, and I'll do some follow-up podcasts and some other content and stuff on some best practices and contract management and things like that. It would really be beneficial, especially someone that's doing like an Airbnb or something small. But anything under a couple $100,000, you don't really need anybody. You're just going to have to do it yourself, and that's how that works. So then you're going to get into something maybe that's like a medium scale, where it's like 250 to like 500, 700, 800 grand. This again is going to be where it's the judgment call on. It might seem like it's not cost effective, but it depends on the complexity of your project, right? So is this project have a lot of moving parts? It's really complex. There's some weird mechanical issues. Like I was building wineries before, and it's like those are a lot of the tanks and the storage and things like that. It depends how complex it is, but that's again a judgment call. If you have a really good GC and a really good architect, you don't really need a construction manager at that point. If it's straight building permit construction, hire an architect. You have to, again, use best practices. Use them to do contract administration during the process. Always pay for that extra, okay? Then you're going to have them like go out to a bidding process, do the bid leveling, find your best GC, do the interviewing process, which again, in later episodes, I can talk about how to interview general contractors, how to do bid leveling so the price is fair and so forth. But a good architect could help walk you through this part. And then you're going to manage they're going to manage the project with you, kind of be your liaison. The problem with this is that you're going to run into is if the architect had made a mistake in the plans. So let me back up. But change orders, there's three different types of change orders, really. I mean, there's more, but these are the three main ones. One is owner directed. It's you're gonna go do the remodel your kitchen, and all of a sudden you want to change the paint or change the way something is. You tell the contractor that's owner directed. You requested that. That's a change in scope you requested. Okay. Number two is going to be unforeseen. This is the stories where you hear that someone opened up a wall, there's spaghetti in there, it's crazy, and they didn't foresee this. They're digging in the backyard and they find, artifacts, dinosaur bones, a body, whatever, and now it's like, hey, man, we got to shut down the project. We didn't know this was here. That's unforeseen, and that's completely legitimate as well. So owner directed, unforeseen. The third one is where things can get a little messy, is errors and omissions. So errors and omissions is when the architect or some consultant early on in the process made a mistake. Now, the general contractor that has bid on this set of plans, and he bid on this set of plans and goes out to the field and he's working, and they find out there's a measurement that's off, or there was something that was specced out that was incorrect. Now he can change it and say, hey, I bid on 100 square feet, and this is obviously 300 square feet. The architect had it wrong. Now, the problem is not having a construction manager and utilizing the architect, is if there is a mistake in those plans, that architect is going to point fingers, most likely. I'm not trying, I love architects, I work with them all the time, but very rarely are they going to come up and say, yeah, our bad. Please tap our errors and omissions assurance. I mean, this is not going to happen. There's going to be some sort of finger pointing, and then it gets a little messy. Because now everybody's mad at the GC. The GC is like, hey, man, your consultants told me this. This is what I prepared my estimates, my bids off of. It was what you guys told me. It was inaccurate. And then it's just like this cluster, and it gets a little messy. However, there's ways to mitigate that as well. If you know what you're doing, you can look at a set of plans and understand that. If you can bid it out to multiple GCs and you can go bid leveling and understand why somebody has a price for this and a price for that, or what are if you're looking at like a change order log, what are possible change orders that could happen in the future? There's ways to do this. Again, this is too short to go into all that detail. I'll do that at a later time, but there is ways to protect yourself if you're confident of just hiring an architect, just hiring a general contractor, and moving forward. That's fine too. Usually those projects, I mean, for rule of thumb, that's got to be under $1 million. Anything over $1 million, and trust me, general contractors come to me all the time for projects that are 2, 3, 5 million, and they'll say like, "Hey, Kyle, like, if we've known each other a while, we don't really need a CM on this. I'll work with you directly." And it's like, "Oh, really? You're going to take care of all my wet utilities, my dry utilities, all my planning with the city. You're going to coordinate with all the tenants that I have. It's just once it gets complicated, it's not like that. And then you get projects that are so large. We're doing one right now as a consultant. It's $30 million, and the general contractor requests a CM to be on site because it's too much coordination and with the clients and so forth that you constantly need a CM just as the liaison between the architects, engineers, and GC to hold owner, architect, contractor meetings on a weekly basis, keep notes, make sure everybody's in line, kind of be the referee for a lot of things. So there's just a lot of different construction can be as simple as a bathroom remodel all the way up to like $100 million projects where you need some sort of policing on like during the project to make sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing and adhering to their contracts. That's really what it all comes down to. So my point was, after you get to that $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 type of thing, $1 million is really where, okay, this is a good sized project. It could be remodeling your boutique hotel. It could be, doing a bunch of construction on your self-storage units. It could be how big of a house remodel might not get that big. Multifamily apartments are really huge on this. People that want to just jump into the syndication game, they buy multifamily for the first time. Oh, we're going to do a $3 million renovation. And they have their property manager try to manage this. That is like, it's a cringe thing that when you say it's a property manager managing a $3 million capital improvement project is just like that's crazy. Property managers have their role. I use property managers all the time. We outsource property management, but they have their role where it is more like maintenance type of stuff, the paint type of stuff, maybe a little landscaping, trash. There's smaller projects, replacing HVAC, things like that. Those small scope projects are what property managers are supposed to do. And eventually you'll see an apartment complex and they're redoing all the roofs and they're redoing all the lights and they're going to repaint. And the property manager's in charge and they're big construction projects. And you talk to property managers and they'll tell you, oh yeah, I can manage the whole renovation. I've done it a million times. I've done it. It's just one of those things where I think there's a little bit of hubris in that, where that's not really their specialty, is managing large scale projects. When you have, 5, 10, you get up to 16 trades on a big construction project, it is a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of subcontractors involved. There's a scope, schedule, and budget that needs to be managed, and that's when a professional comes in. And I know that a lot of developers or real estate investors lean on their property management to manage these large design and construction projects, and it's just not efficient. It just really isn't. Once a project gets to 1 million square feet, that's when I recommend to hire a professional. Once again, I don't do this anymore. We're not selling anything, but it's just something I have seen go wrong. So, what are the basics of project and construction management? Okay, so scope management. So one of the most critical aspects of any construction project is defining and controlling the scope of work. This includes determining exactly what's going to be done, how it will be done, and setting the proper expectations with the stakeholders. A project manager keeps everyone focused on the scope, avoiding the dreaded scope creep. That's what everyone talks about. They have a project for $200,000 and next thing you know it's $250,000. What happened? Scope creep. It's those little change orders, the little things that they didn't account for. Oh, would you like this? Would you like that added? Would you like that added? A good CM from the very beginning will go over all that with you. They will say, yeah, you have a bid from this GC, but he didn't include, painting here, or he didn't include striping the parking lot, or he didn't include, traffic sensors that are going to have to be replaced, or he didn't include the signage on your building, or he didn't, like that. They'll go through it. They're that tight where they look at a set of plans or a scope of work and make sure everything's included. The biggest thing after 12, 13, 14 years of doing this with clients was we would visit them at their restaurants and their retail. They wanted to go remodel. And I would say they would ask for a price. And I'd say, yeah, I think the entire thing, including the entire project, will be $500,000. And they'd be like, that's crazy. I had a general contractor in here walk it, and he just said it was going to be $320,000. And we'd be like, okay, did he include like architecture, engineering, permitting, the planning, the furniture, the fixtures, the signage on the door? You start adding up all these little things, and they'd be like, no. I'm like, what about the soda fountain, drinks? So what about the bathroom? I mean, all these different little things. And next thing you know, you show a complete budget, a complete project budget for everything, and the price was dead on to what we had estimated because we've done it so many times. And that's where people can get into trouble. The worst thing you can ever do is have a project and the first day you want to go get a price and you have a GC walk it. Just take your money and just start throwing it out the window. Like it's such bad practice to do something like that. You want to have consultants come out and understand a scope of work. You want to have an architect come out and look at it. You want to have a construction manager and an architect. That's like really where you want to have, you want to create your scope of work first. Then, based on your scope of work, you want to talk to some consultants and general contractors and so forth and understand this is what we envision. What would it cost for this? And then you want to break things down into unit pricing. Okay, your linear pricing for this, your square footage for this, that type of thing, and you can understand, are these prices accurate, and compare later on. But we'll get there. Your second piece, okay, that a construction manager is going to do, he's going to manage your schedule. So Your schedule, good project manager will break the project into phases in a Kanban way, and it's going to be called a CPM. It's critical path management. So when you have a critical path management is having a schedule and knowing that certain things are dependent on other things being finished, and if they're not finished in a time, there's a delay. There's other things that aren't really dependent on something having to be finished before them, and they can happen anytime during the project. So certain things have to be delivered at the exact right time because they need to be, say, like there has to be some mechanical, electrical, plumbing installed before certain equipment has to get delivered. That needs to be timed perfectly. If something's delivered too early, it's now sitting on site, in a storage unit or something, or too late and the whole project's just waiting for this piece. That type of coordination is very important, and construction managers are supposed to be tied to that. Also, taking a step back, you have your scope, schedule, and your budget. Your contract is the first place that all this management begins. You're going to go get you got to put some people on a contract. Your architects, your engineer, your GC, and that contract has to have specific language in it that is what are change orders? If you happen to get a change order for something unforeseen, what does it say? It should have that all the backup is required. It should only be a maximum of profit. Depends on what you negotiate with your GC, 7%, 8%, 10%. It should be maxed. So that way if someone says, oh, we forgot this, it's like, okay, show me all your backup from all your subcontractors. Show me your profit and overhead can only be 8%, and then I can approve this change order. And then your contract should also have contingency in it that you're pulling from, so you don't have to go back to your lender, so you can use those funds to pay for that change order. So that's something that is, that's kind of basic, but I think everybody forgets that. Delays, okay? You asking your contractor to submit a budget, submit a schedule. That schedule is 85 days. Okay, they get a 5-day buffer. That's 90 days. On a day 91, they now owe you money. You got to negotiate what's in the contract. They owe you $800 a day. They owe you $900 a day. Depends on what your damages are going to be, and you need to know that. So if you don't have that in there, and that's delayed 1 week, delayed 2 weeks, delayed a month, now what? You're not creating. Maybe it's an income property. You're not getting that rent. You're not getting that income because the contractor was late. So they're change ordering you. They're delayed. Maybe they didn't show up or something like that. You can dock them for that if it's in your contracts. So contract management is construction management. The construction manager and project manager are going to go back to the contract all the time and say, this is what it says for this. This is what it says for this. Okay, you need to respond here. If we send them, I'm not even going to get into submittals and RFIs and all these different things. I think that's too much for right now. But there is a way to do things. If they want to get paid, they got to send in, conditional lien releases from them, from all their subs. They got to follow certain procedures. Then they get their paycheck. Then we have inspectors that go out periodically. We have all these different things. So that's just the basic management. And then third, we have budget management. Now, I think this is their top priority. I have a budget, stay within the budget. Everything affects the budget. So I understand the mentality, but if your scope changes, your budget and schedule are going to change. If your schedule changes, usually the budget and scope change. They all three, it's like triangle. They all pull on each other. So if your scope is managed properly, your schedule is managed properly, your budget will automatically be managed properly. Okay, and it's just, the project manager ensures that costs are accurately estimated, bids are evaluated, and then adjust for unforeseens and so forth. That's what it is. Now, quality control and inspections is usually going to be third party. It's great to have a CM go out there and make sure people aren't billing for more than they should be. What I mean by this is if you have a contractor that has $50,000 worth of concrete in their bid, and they bill you, and it should be itemized what they're billing for, a little bit of general conditions, profit, so forth, carpentry, everything that they've done from the last billing, and they have concrete in there and it says, 50% done, 25 grand you're owing them. And then you have your CM go out there and say, no, only 10% is done. You don't have to pay them that right now. That's a huge one too. And then at the end of the project, I just had a conversation at a Christmas party, and there was a developer who's done dozens of these, and he says he can't get his GC back on site to fix things, And I'm like, well, what about your retention? Doesn't he want it? He's like, what retention? And this again is just like, what do you mean, what retention? Retention is 10% of the total contract value that you're holding back until you go through that punch list and sign off and you say everything's okay. Then you give them that last check. You're holding the money. You do that with your architect as well. All your vendors, everything. You hold that last piece until you have a chance to go approve it, put your eyes on it, and sign off on it. And a lot of these groups, they're just not doing that. So overall, a construction manager, if the project is large enough, if the small ones, it doesn't make sense, but it does it large enough, it can justify their price. Maybe a CM for project is 20 grand, 25 grand, and on $1 million project, I mean, it's 2%. It can withhold that. It can sustain that rather. That's not going to break the bank. Hey, it's only 2%, 3%, something like that. But on a small project, even if a project's small or large, it's still kind of a similar price. It's like hourly. So it just doesn't make sense. But if your project will justify it, it's over $1 million. It's complex. It needs to be done on time. You'll spend the 20 or 30 grand for this CM. But then there's like a lot of passed on savings that you might even break even or even make money on it. And what I mean by that is like, go back to my wedding planner example. You'll hire the wedding planner and you'll be like, man, I don't want to spend 20 grand or whatever the wedding planner costs, but yet she has a hookup at the venue. She has a hookup at the caterer. She knows to get a discount for the band invitation. And next thing you know, all her discounts or savings add up. And you're like, shoot, it actually, it only cost me 5 grand instead of 20 or something because of all the savings. Same thing with like interior designers. I don't know if you ever used one. You ever used an interior designer? They'll come in and first you're like, oh, it's crazy price. And then they get you 20% off all your furniture and all your stuff. And it ends up almost like it pays for itself in a way. Construction managers do that, but they also prevent cost overruns and for all the other vendors to take advantage of you. Their job is to look out for you. So if GC is giving you change order that's not legitimate, get that out of here. Subcontractors coming in saying this is the cost, you don't know any different. You're like, I don't know if that's the cost or not. It's like going to a mechanic, tells you $1,000. You're like, I don't know. That's what a CM is there to be like, no, that should be $700, not $1,000. So those little savings, this and that. And in my experience, when you have a CM on a project, everybody snaps to it. Everybody jumps to it. Yeah, it's just they know there is like a watchdog on everything, and people don't mess around. You don't have a CM on a project and have these crazy delays and this and that. I mean, he's kicking it off with a meeting. Every contract is getting scrutinized before it's signed. They'll even before, if something needs to be signed during the project from the city, anything like that, they'll bring it to you, explain to you what it is, and advise you if you should even sign it or not, or withhold payment or not, or this or that. I mean, it's like your guide throughout the entire thing. I don't know if individuals in this industry that are new to Airbnb and multifamily and syndication and boutique hotels and so forth just aren't aware of this is a thing in the industry, or they're trying to save money, but they're basically tripping over dollars to pick up nickels. But if a project is large enough, I highly suggest using a professional because it's going to save you a ton of money. And I could go into right now about some of these horror stories that I wrote down here about like the do-it-yourself construction management and delays and botched jobs. But I think a lot of people probably listening to this that are getting any value out of it, if they find it interesting at all, it's because they've already gone through that. You've already tried to remodel your house or your new investment property, your rental property, or this, or that, and it just and it didn't go very well, and that's unfortunate, and it can be prevented. That whole thing where I'm seeing on Instagram and YouTube about these jokes and these memes about, man, my contractor didn't show up again, or man, it's this feeling when you get your 10th change order, and this and that. And it's like almost this like accepted, laughable type of thing that these GCs are just going to screw you, and these projects go long, and aren't they a pain? Everybody kind of commiserates together. And I'm just listening to this like, you guys understand this can all be prevented. It's not, I wouldn't be bragging or joking about something where you are just actively messing up and not even realizing it. I mean, maybe it's not your industry, you don't really get it, but it is preventable. And if you are getting change ordered, if you are having delays in your project, you can point the finger at that general contractor, that architect, all you want, but you have to accept some responsibility. It's your fault. You didn't know how to control them at the beginning. You didn't know how to put their contract together. You didn't know how to kick it off properly. You didn't know how to check the plans or the scope or this or that, the budget, the schedules, and because you just weren't familiar, you're entrusting, people that are professionals to do this, a general contractor to do this for you. They have your best interest at heart. The architect has your best interest at heart. All this. If you're a franchise opening up a business, you think the franchisor, the corporation, knows what they're doing and has your best interest, but they'll all make mistakes. And the only way to prevent it is educate yourself on the best practices, which we can provide if we go to, I'll put some more stuff out there and make sure there's like a link or something where you can download some best practices for free. Just make sure you do this. Or if the project is large enough, for the 10th time I'll say it, but if the project's large enough, get yourself a pro. And stop banging your head against the wall. So that's all I got for today. But thanks for tuning in, and see you next time.